Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, I move that the amendment to the motion be amended by inserting the following words after the word fluctuations. Quote, and because the government will not provide for the validation of borrowing by King's High School, Dunedin, and the allocation of funds to the repayment of loans relating to the Performance Arts Centre at no net cost to the Crown. Mr Speaker, that is an issue which I have undertaken to bring up on every occasion. On this particular occasion, it will not add time to the debate, but there is an issue of gross injustice for a particular school which sits there. It's one which members of the Education and Science Committee know a lot about. It's something on which we've received support from the ACT Party in the past, and I have undertaken to bring this up, and there will be occasions when matters would otherwise go straight through the House where they will be delayed as a result of an amendment of that nature being moved. Mr Speaker, I want today, though, to focus on one particular issue, and it is the declarations and their veracity made by the Attorney-General. There has been, Mr Speaker, some publicity recently around declarations, careless declarations, I think that could be described, in relation to Jonathan Young's declaration of pecuniary interest, and he has moved to correct that. This week, Mr Speaker, we want to go to the issue of the hapless Chris Finlayson, who was already in serious trouble for the way he kept on changing his description of the relationship with a Supreme Court judge in whose favour he intervened. And especially because he did not inform either the Prime Minister or the Cabinet of...
Point of order.
Your assistance in determining whether what has actually been spoken of here in the House at the moment by the member opposite is within the scope of the bill that we are in fact debating.
The point of order, Mr Speaker.
I call Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, the point I'm getting to is whether the appropriation is sufficient for the inquiry which will result from the errors that Mr Finlayson has made.
Well, this is a little bit of new territory for me, and I'm going to have to take a little bit of advisement from the clerk. I was trying to sort out a couple of other technical details at the time, but this is an appropriation debate, and I'd like to hear from Mr Mallard, if he's got a point to make here, why a personal declaration that the member's making reference to is within the scope of an appropriation, because it seems to me at the moment it is beyond the scope of the appropriation. If he can put forward an argument that says that's within the scope, I'm willing to listen to it, but at this moment I think he's out of scope.
Mr Speaker, I'll reiterate the point that I made, and it was about the next point that I was to make, and that is that it is important that the appropriations be sufficient in order to finance the inquiry, which could well end up being a Royal Commission of Inquiry into the approach that the... I'm speaking to a point of order.
Say so.
Well, I was invited to speak to a point of order by the Speaker.
I thought you were continuing your speech, Mr Mallard. My apologies.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make, Mr Speaker, it is my view that there must be an appropriation for a commission, and especially a Royal Commission of Inquiry. And it is the point that I'm trying to establish is that there will have to be an inquiry set up by the Prime Minister or the Minister of Internal Affairs into this area.
Well, if the member's going to seek about an extension of the appropriation for an inquiry, I think that's fine. But if the member is referring to pecuniary interests, as I heard him before, then that's out of scope. So if the member wants to bring it to that, I'll let him continue as long as it's directed to the appropriations. Clerk advises me that it's a public affairs amendment and it is therefore in scope. Yes, I've got that. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Craig Foss.
Excuse me, Mr Speaker. Just, but also can I ask your assistance in the member opposite, thank you for that clarification, was also starting to reference members of our Supreme Court and matters that are under review in there. And I'd seek your advice, Mr Speaker, if it was appropriate that those names were mentioned, as I think the member did, or was going down that track.
It's not my intention to further mention, and I didn't anyway.
The member did make reference to the Supreme Court inquiries but did not make mention of any particulars about it, stopped one judge short of it, and the member's point of order is well made, and I hope the member has indicated he has no intention of going in that direction, and nor should he.
No.
I invite Mr Mallard to continue.
Mr Speaker, the only point that I'm making in this area is that the Attorney-General failed to inform Cabinet of his intention to intervene, and he failed to inform the Prime Minister when he ran into trouble. And that is the reason that he already has problems. But, Mr Speaker, the Attorney-General helped set up a company in 2006 after he became a Member of Parliament, became a director of it then, and has failed to declare it on any return since that date.
Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I'm aware of your previous rulings on this matter. I think the Honourable Trevor Mallard is straying well outside the topic of the debate. He may well have just completely defied you with the statement he made in the House while you were in discussions with the clerk. Mr Speaker, this is an appropriations debate. These matters are not part of this debate. It's not a general debate. It's not particularly wide-ranging. Mr Speaker, relevance should be something that I think the Chair looks to in this debate.
Well, I took the ruling I gave earlier on advisement from the clerk, and the clerk's advice was that the member had moved an amendment about these matters which involves an appropriation, therefore the member was entitled to speak to them. That's the advice I got from the clerk. And the member is I've cautioned him, is to speak specifically to that amendment and keep himself well constrained within that. As long as he does, then he remains within the ambit of this debate. The Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I assume then that if I go to the table I can pick up a copy of the amendment.
Copy of the amendment should be on the table.
Yeah, but why aren't they on the table here?
Well, can I just ask the clerk, is the amendment on the table? The members moved it. The amendment should be available.
Well,
yes.
could I have one? Could you direct me to where it might be?
Well, we can't hold the debate up for that. I'd ask
well, you can't have a debate if members don't know what they're debating, for goodness sake. That's why we have bills on the table.
Well, can I just deal with this firstly? We have a slight difficulty about this. The member moved an amendment at the time and spoke to it to the House, so all members who were here would have heard it, and that's not unusual about that. The amendment, as I understand it, is in a typed form and should be on the table. If it's not, then I'll ask the clerk to attend to it and make sure that you have a copy of it immediately. But I assure you that the member, in starting his speech, read out the amendment and thereby reading it, as in first reading, has read it to the House. It's now available to the House.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Trevor Mallard.
Can I just ask you to get further advice on relevance here, Mr Speaker? I thought that as part of the debate we were also taking a reading of the Impress Supply Bill. Is that the case?
As I understand it, that is the case.
Well, Mr Speaker, that is a very broad debate. It is the financing of the government for its first 3 months of the next financial year until the budget goes through. I don't think there is a wider debate than that.
Well, I draw members' attention to the motion by the Honourable Bill English that the Appropriation 2009 Supplementary Estimates Bill and the Empress Supply First 2010-11 Bill be now read a second time, and that's the question which is before the House.
Speaker, and I will go back to the point that I'm making, and that is asking the government whether there is enough money in the Impress Supply Bill to finance a commission of inquiry into the declarations made by the Honourable Chris Finlayson. Standing Orders 128 are very, very clear, and they say that every return of pecuniary interest must contain the following information effective as at the effective date of the return, the name of each company of which the member is a director. The 2008 Privileges Committee report makes it very clear that it is up to every member to ascertain, make clear